Do you hear the silent scream echoing through the chambers of memory where childhood should have been? There are souls who walk through life carrying the weight of survival instead of the lightness of play, souls who traded innocence for preservation long before their minds could comprehend the transaction. The psychological landscape of these survivors is a terrain of shadows, where the tender roots of childhood were severed by harsh winds of necessity, leaving behind intricate wounds that pulse beneath the surface of seemingly composed exteriors. Imagine a child whose eyes have already witnessed too much, whose small hands have learned to shield not just from physical threats but from the devastating erosion of emotional safety. These are the children who became adults before their time, who learned to read emotional landscapes with the precision of seasoned cartographers, mapping danger and survival with every breath. Their inner world is a complex architecture of defense mechanisms so sophisticated that they themselves often cannot distinguish between protection and pain. The unconscious carries these memories like a deep underwater current, silent yet powerful, moving through the veins of experience with a force that cannot be contained by rational thought. Each survival strategy becomes a layer of self, a protective skin woven from threads of resilience and unspoken trauma. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget, storing each moment of forced maturity in the muscles, in the breath, in the very rhythm of heartbeats that learn to be quiet when loudness could mean destruction. And if these words awaken something inside you right now, allow yourself to respond with a small gesture of presence, maybe a like or a brief reflection. And if you feel that this journey speaks to something deep within you, subscribe so we can continue exploring these inner landscapes together. The psychological wounds of childhood interruption are not linear narratives but complex labyrinths where time folds upon itself. Survival creates its own logic, a language spoken in the silence between words, in the spaces where vulnerability was once a luxury too dangerous to afford. These souls learn to fragment themselves, to create internal rooms where different versions of self can exist simultaneously, protective and wounded, strong and deeply fragile. Childhood stolen is not merely a loss of years but a fundamental disruption of psychological development. The child who must become an adult too soon learns to navigate emotional terrain with a map drawn in survival instincts, where trust is a foreign country and safety is a mirage that constantly shifts. Their inner world becomes a fortress, meticulously constructed from observations, from anticipating threats, from understanding human nature not through the innocent lens of childhood curiosity but through the sharp, survival-driven perception of one who has seen too much. Each coping mechanism is a delicate thread in an intricate psychological tapestry, woven with threads of resilience, of pain, of extraordinary adaptation. The mind of such a survivor is not broken but remarkably engineered, a testament to human capacity for transformation and endurance. They carry within them an invisible landscape of strength, a complex emotional ecosystem that has learned to bloom in the most challenging of terrains. The shadows of interrupted childhood do not simply disappear with time. They pulse beneath the surface, like underground rivers carving silent pathways through the terrain of consciousness. Each survival mechanism becomes a room in the vast house of self, some locked tight with intricate emotional mechanisms, others cracked open just enough to let fragments of memory seep through like pale moonlight filtering through damaged shutters. Imagine the internal landscape as a theater of unresolved narratives. The performers are fragments of a self that learned to divide, to protect, to endure. Some characters wear masks of competence, of apparent strength, while others huddle in the backstage areas of consciousness, trembling with the memories of what was lost. The drama plays out in breathless whispers, in sudden moments of inexplicable vulnerability, in the way the body remembers what the mind struggles to comprehend. Trauma does not simply happen and then conclude. It is a living entity, a visitor that takes up residence in the deepest chambers of being. It transforms the internal architecture, reshaping neural pathways, rewriting the fundamental language of emotional experience. The child who survives becomes an expert cartographer of human pain, mapping intricate emotional landscapes with a precision that both protects and isolates. If you feel these insights stirring something within you, share your voice and support this space with a like. These reflections help others find their way through the same shadows. And if you wish to keep walking with us through these deeper layers of the mind, join us by subscribing. The defense mechanisms emerge as intricate dance choreographies. Each movement carefully calculated, each gesture a response to an unseen threat. The hypervigilance becomes a kind of sixth sense, an internal guardian that never truly rests. Relationships become complex negotiation spaces where trust is a fragile crystal that can shatter with the slightest emotional tremor. The survivor learns to read the unspoken, to sense the subtle vibrations of potential danger long before it materializes. Childhood memories become like scattered photographs in a forgotten album. Some images crisp and clear, others blurred, some deliberately obscured by the mind's protective mechanisms. The brain becomes a master of preservation, creating elaborate storage systems for pain. Emotions are filed away in carefully constructed mental archives, some locked so deeply that accessing them feels like archaeological excavation of the soul. The body carries these stories in its muscular memory, in the way tension accumulates in shoulders, in the startle response that emerges without warning, in the sudden coldness that spreads through the system when a particular sound or smell triggers an ancient survival mechanism. Each physical response is a testament to the extraordinary resilience of human consciousness, a language of survival more profound than words could ever express. Psychological adaptation becomes an art form of extraordinary complexity. The mind learns to create internal safe spaces, to construct elaborate defense mechanisms that function like intricate clockwork. Some parts of self become watchers, perpetual guardians monitoring potential threats. Other parts learn to fragment, to disperse, to become fluid and invisible when protection demands complete emotional camouflage. The journey of healing is not a linear path but a complex emotional topology. It requires acknowledging the extraordinary strength that survival demanded, while simultaneously creating space for the wounded child who was never allowed to simply exist. The process involves gentle negotiation with these internal landscapes, with the various parts of self that learn to protect, to endure, to transform pain into a kind of resilient architecture. In the deepest caverns of consciousness, where shadows intertwine with the most primal aspects of being, the true confrontation begins. Here, in this internal landscape of unspoken truths, the fragmented self faces its most profound reckoning. The walls between protective illusions and raw vulnerability begin to dissolve, revealing the intricate tapestry of survival that has been woven through years of silent endurance. The internal war rages with a silence more profound than any external conflict. Each emotional scar becomes a landscape of its own, a terrain marked by the invisible wounds of interrupted innocence. The mind moves through these spaces like a traveler in an unknown country, recognizing landmarks of pain, encountering the ghosts of moments stolen, of childhood experiences never experienced, of emotions never fully felt. Survival leaves its mark not just in memory, but in the very essence of being. The nervous system becomes a complex network of warning signals, of heightened awareness that transforms every interaction into a potential minefield. Trust becomes a foreign language, learned slowly, painfully, with each carefully placed step feeling like a potential betrayal of the self's most fundamental protective mechanisms. The internal child exists in a state of perpetual waiting. Not waiting to be saved, but waiting to be acknowledged. This internal fragment carries the purest essence of vulnerability, the part that was forced to become invisible, to disappear in order to survive. It holds within it a profound wisdom, a raw understanding of human resilience that defies conventional narrative of trauma and healing. Emotional landscapes shift like tectonic plates, creating internal earthquakes that reshape the entire terrain of consciousness. The defense mechanisms that once protected now begin to reveal their limitations. What once served as impenetrable armor now feels like a prison, a constraint that no longer matches the current reality. The process of transformation demands a radical act of surrender, of allowing the most vulnerable parts of self to breathe, to speak, to exist. The body speaks a language more profound than words. Each muscle holds a memory, each breath carries the echo of survival. The nervous system becomes an intricate map of resilience, of moments survived, of extraordinary adaptations that allowed continuation when everything seemed impossible. Pain becomes not just a sensation, but a complex narrative of human endurance. In the deepest moments of introspection, the fragmented self begins to recognize its own extraordinary strength. The survival mechanisms that once seemed like a burden now reveal themselves as intricate works of psychological art. Each coping strategy, each moment of protection, becomes a testament to the human capacity for transformation, for finding light in the darkest of internal landscapes. The confrontation with the shadow self is not a battle, but a profound reconciliation. It is an acknowledgement of the extraordinary journey, of the parts of self that were forced to become invisible, of the strength that allowed survival in the most challenging of circumstances. The internal landscape begins to shift, to breathe, to create space for healing that is both gentle and revolutionary. I'll complete the script with part 4, focusing on integration and emotional closure. Healing is not a destination but a profound metamorphosis. The internal landscape begins to breathe with a new rhythm, where fragmented parts of self start to recognize each other not as strangers, but as intricate components of a resilient whole. The wounds that once defined existence now become portals of transformation, windows through which a deeper understanding of human complexity emerges. The journey of integration is a delicate dance of compassion. Each fragment of self that was forced into silence now receives permission to exist, to speak, to be witnessed. The internal child who was compelled to become an adult too soon begins to find its voice, not as a cry of pain, but as a whisper of profound wisdom. Survival is no longer seen as a weakness, but as an extraordinary act of human resilience. The psychological architecture begins to reshape itself. What were once locked rooms become open spaces, where memories can breathe, where pain can be acknowledged without consuming the entire landscape of consciousness. The defense mechanisms transform from rigid walls into flexible membranes, allowing deeper understanding, permitting vulnerability to coexist with strength. If you feel that this story helped you see your own inner landscape more clearly, offer a like and share your thoughts. And if you want this space to remain part of your journey ahead, subscribe. Together we continue the path of understanding, healing, and awakening. Transformation occurs in the most subtle of moments. It is not a dramatic revelation, but a gentle awakening, a gradual recognition that survival is not just about enduring, but about reclaiming the essence of self that was never truly lost. The internal landscape begins to bloom with a newfound softness, a compassionate understanding that transcends the old narratives of pain and protection. The body, which has been a silent keeper of memories, begins to release its held tensions. Muscles that were perpetually braced for survival start to find a new rhythm, a more relaxed state of being. The nervous system, once a hypervigilant guardian, learns to distinguish between actual threats and remembered dangers. Breath becomes deeper, more expansive, carrying with it the promise of healing. Forgiveness emerges not as a singular act, but as a continuous process of understanding. Forgiveness of the self, of the circumstances that demanded extraordinary survival, of the parts of self that were forced to fragment. Each moment of compassion becomes a healing balm, a gentle touch that acknowledges the profound journey of survival and transformation. The final integration is a sacred process of reunification. The fragmented parts of self begin to recognize each other not as enemies, but as different expressions of an extraordinary survival narrative. The internal child, the protective guardian, the wounded self, the resilient self, all find a place of coexistence, of mutual understanding, of profound respect. In this moment of profound healing, a new narrative emerges. No longer defined by survival, but by the extraordinary capacity for transformation. The psychological landscape becomes a testament to human resilience, to the profound ability to not just endure, but to find beauty, wisdom, and deep compassion in the most challenging of internal journeys. The path forward is not about erasing the past, but about honoring the extraordinary strength that allowed survival. Each scar becomes a story of resilience, each moment of pain transformed into a portal of deeper understanding. The self emerges not broken but profoundly whole, carrying within it the extraordinary wisdom of survival, of healing, of human complexity. If something in these words stirred a truth inside you, don't ignore it. Follow the channel and continue this inner journey with me. You were never meant to walk it alone.